Good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. I suggest we get going. We've got the majority of our subscribers in the call right now. Thank you, first of all, for joining. I sincerely hope that all of you are doing well, staying safe, and finding a new balance in this I guess new normal for the next couple of weeks. Um, we're welcoming over 100 attendees from across the EU, so there's clearly an interest in in sharing the expertise and specifically in the case studies of our customers, which is also why we'll be doing this session in English. It's a second webinar actually. We had a first one last Friday, so we're making this part of a series. Last week, we had a case study in healthcare with an organization that manages over 40 elderly care homes in Belgium, which you can find the recording and the materials on our website, should you be interested. And today we're going to deep dive into a case study with Laura. Laura is the internal communications director at Delhaize. Delhaize is one of the largest food retailers in Belgium and Luxembourg. And Laura, I must say, I'm extremely thankful that you've been able to carve out and willing to carve out the time to join us today. Because obviously food retail is one of these industries these days that is critical and in keeping our society going, basically, in making sure that we've got the right means to still go shopping and cook, etc., etc. And obviously that makes it a very difficult situation to be in for, I guess, the employees at Delhaize, but also for someone managing internal communications at Delhaize. So before we dive in, I want to share a couple of practicalities, and let's kick it off with the agenda. I'll share a very brief introduction and then hand it over quite quickly to Laura, who will talk to us about the communication strategy in retail. We'll wrap up with a series of questions, and basically you can raise all your questions throughout the session at any point in time using the Q&A section. So there should be a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. If you open it up, you have a panel where you can raise your questions. Towards the end of the session, I'll be basically picking up some of these questions and asking them to Laura. We commit to having all of the questions answered. So we'll be taking the majority of them live as we're in this session. If we can't get through all of them, we'll take them offline and still get back to you. We'll also be recording this session and sharing the materials afterwards. So we will send you or everyone in the session a recap email with essentially the materials and the recordings of what we've done today. Let me start with just a very brief introduction on why are we doing this. Spencer is essentially an employee engagement and employee communications platform with a strong mobile dimension as well as a desktop solution. And ultimately, we help organizations to make sure that their employees are connected to the mission, vision, strategy, and purpose of the organization. And we basically have a model that consists of, I would say, 3 dimensions. And basically what we're doing is we're bringing a series of elements around employee experience into a product to basically make sure that we're relevant to employees throughout their day-to-day. So we're offering elements like consulting my shift, requesting time off, retrieving contact details of my colleagues, submitting expenses, submitting an incident, a safety issue, etc., etc. Basically to install a channel where you can truly reach everyone with a truly simple asset, to ultimately create a channel where you can deliver your message, so your mission, your vision, your objectives, your strategies, etc., to the right audiences within your employee community. So powerful targeting, segmentation, personalization capabilities, and ultimately measure the impact of what you are doing. So how are your employees relating to the messages that you're sharing? I'll pause here. Obviously, if you're interested, let's take this offline. You can send me a message offline to understand more in depth on what Spencer does. But this is kind of the ecosystem. And I wanted to share this because it sets the scene a little bit for what Laura will be mentioning when she refers to Spencer later on. We typically do this across a series of industries. We've got customers in professional services and consulting, in construction, in manufacturing, in retail, in healthcare, you name it. Essentially, the common denominator is always a highly decentralized workforce. So a lot of people basically not in the office or decentralized, even distributed people on the road. And very often a highly diverse workforce where you're combining blue collars and white collar employees and basically need to have this type of channel where you can reach the full audience, but with an appropriate contextual message and definitely also understand the impact. The reason we started these series is because a couple of weeks ago, actually, as the Corona or COVID crisis started to emerge, we found a very interesting study from Edelman, and that's a global communications agency, and they basically ran a study worldwide that indicated that basically the communication that comes from your employer is what employees are most likely to trust. As you know, a lot of information is coming to us through, government websites, through journals, through basically the news on the television, but also through social media, through WhatsApp, etc. And not everything is as reliable as it should be. So when you look at the perception of employees, they basically deem that their communication from their employer is the most reliable source of information. And that basically kind of pushed us to start looking at, we started seeing an uptake already in February in terms of our customers talking about Corona, talking about COVID. It's exploded in March and continues to, to take the majority of the communication or the topics that are being talked about in Spencer. And that basically drove us to say, okay, let's have a look at, first of all, our findings, right, across our customer base. What are the best working tactics? What are the best working experiences? And how can we bundle these and basically share that expertise? But secondly, making sure that we can also give the floor to those companies that actually have a very specific situation, the healthcare situation we addressed last week, the retail situation right now, and how do they basically communicate with their audience, leveraging Spencer, but also obviously leveraging all of the other channels and all of the other tactics that are required to, to create that kind of sense of trust, to ensure employees and to make sure that you continue to engage with them in this new situation, basically. So that's why we've opened up a series of guides on our website around, tips for internal communication, a specific guide on retail. There's also, and that's the one on the right-hand side, specific best practices. So that's our analysis on the best working communication tactics throughout this crisis, which you can find on our website or by scanning the QR code. But secondly, and the reason we're here is we want to make sure we give the floor to essentially a number of our partners and a number of our customers who are demonstrating, very specific tactics in basically getting through this situation. So we started things off last week with Phopia. We have Laura today, and next week we have an Ask the Expert session with a number of communication strategists from Acanto who will basically be taking all of your questions. So as part of the wrap-up of this session, we'll send you an invite for that session as well. And we welcome all of the questions in preparation of that session so we can basically give Acanto the floor and tackle some of the challenges or questions that you might have. On that note, I will hand things over to Laura. Laura, hello there. You're still on mute, by the way. Sincerely, thanks for carving out the time. I know it's extremely busy for anyone in your industry. I know and I can see some of the communications flowing through Spencer, so I know how actively you're involved in actually engaging and building that trust and making sure that you get through this this moment. The reason we've taken this topic a little bit broader is because I personally also see the communication strategy that you guys are deploying as a kind of best practice in terms of how you engage with, with blue collar audiences that indeed are very often more difficult to reach, more difficult to actually engage around strategy, around objectives, and around mission and vision. And I think that's kind of a poster case in terms of how Delhaize does that, in terms of creating that framework and then delivering results and showing impact and contribution of a blue-collar audience. Second thing I particularly like is the way you communicate in a very visual fashion to your employees, right? Keeping it lean, keeping it digestible and bite-sized. So those are a number of the things that I know you will allude to, but that's, I think, of particular interest also for the people on the call. Lastly, obviously, we'll come to how you've leveraged the different communication channels and tactics in this time of crisis, which is obviously also one of the key elements that we had expressed as the objectives for this session. Last thing I want to share, just so everyone in the audience is aware, if Laura mentions Leo later on, Leo is actually the internal name at Delhaize for the Spencer platform. So just so you know, that's connecting the dots here. And on that note, Laura, I'll stop sharing and I'll give you the floor to talk through your materials and everything you've prepared for us today.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I think the bar is very high. I'm going to try to manage the expectations here. So as Martin said, I prepared some slides. I'm going to share them with you. Well, this is working. Here you go. Let me show. I prepared some PowerPoint slides, and as Martin explains, I'm going to tackle a number of topics. So I've prepared some slides to explain you more on how we launched Leo and why we launched Leo, what was the reason behind it, and why and how did we prepare for this launch, especially because Leo is an important tool, but it's part of a bigger ecosystem, a bigger communication toolbox. And I also want to bring this message and this story on how can you improve your in real life, your personal communication? How can you improve your visual communication? And how all of this is really one combined story, and how you can already start to prepare today. Even if you do not have today a tool like Spencer, you can already start today to prepare towards such a tool and to start motivating and engaging non-desktop workers in a disruptive way. So as Martin explained, I'm working at Delhaize, and Delhaize is a food retailer, for those who do not know Delhaize. I'm in the internal communication team since 6 years now, and the last 2.5 years, I'm at the head of the internal communication and translation team. And so when I say internal communication, we have a number of target groups at Delhaize. And I've tried to visualize the most important target groups, because first of all, we are responsible for all the communication towards our supporting services, meaning our desktop workers or people at the headquarters. But we also have a lot of stores that are owned by franchisors, and these are AD shops, Proxy, and Shop and Go. And so this is a very particular situation, because the people in the stores represent the Delhaize brand, but at the same time, they're not on the Delhaize payroll. And to give you a number, there are about approximately 600 of our franchisor stores, and represent half of our sales. So they are a very important target group for us, which is more like a B2B situation. And then we have, as a third group, our own supermarkets, so the bigger supermarkets, if you like. And there we have three target groups. First of all, our store management. Second of all, our departments responsible. So it's, for example, the dry section or the frozen section. They have a responsible per department, and there are 6 responsibles per department. And then last but certainly not least, we have our sales associates. So the people who really fill the ranks and do the hard work. And the last but not least, we have our blue collars in our warehouses. And why do I make this distinction between the department responsibles, the sales associates, and store management? Is because of the tools and because of the way that we can reach this audience. Because our department responsibles and sales associates, they do not have an email address, and actually only supporting services and store management of the supermarkets, do they have an email address at Delhaize. This means that all the other audience we need to reach via an alternative way. And so we cannot use our mails to reach them. And that's what makes it so challenging, but also so interesting. And so our challenges in 2017, so before we started to launch or to prepare for a more digital way of working, was just that, the fact that we weren't able to reach these associates who do not have an email address, because our tools were very outdated. We have very old tools, but also our internet was really outdated, and we did not have any way to reach our associates really on the work floor. And that's where you need to reach if you really want to have an impact in terms of communication, in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of engagement. For our supporting services or our desktop workers, they were really asking for a mobile application to have the information always in their pocket. So this was our first and most important challenge. A second one is that because of the fact that we didn't have any way to reach our associates directly, our communication was always very slow, because this implicated that we always need to pass via the hierarchy, so via the management, to cascade certain messages, which made which created a huge bottleneck, because even for small details, we always had to pass via the store management or via the blue collar management, and it's just very stupid from time to time having to use the time of the store manager to cascade certain messages. So this made that our communication always was very reactive and very slow. A third very big frustration was that there was so many information available. And I think that's something that probably a lot of you will recognize, the fact that people don't know where to find the information that they need to do their job, but also to be engaged. So people were just lost, and we really want to guide them in, okay, where can I find everything, all the information I need to do my job. Top down, today we're in a social media culture where it's very normal to give feedback, to like, to comment, to have interaction. And so both in our events, so in our real life communication, as in our digital communication, there was very few possibilities to have this kind of interaction and to have a real exchange. So this we really wanted to change. And we also really want to add the fun part, because people at Delhaize, we love to have fun, we love to have to laugh, and the humor and the fun was really missing in our communication. And then last but certainly not least was the feeling of belonging. We are very proud of our brand, we are very proud of what we do, but we saw that people often only saw what they were doing, and they were missing the bigger picture. They were missing, okay, how do what I do link to the bigger strategy, to the bigger vision of Delhaize. And so we were really missing the opportunity to make them even more proud. So our solution was Leo, so the internal name for Spencer. And Leo is, as Maarten explained, a digital application. It's available on desktop and on mobile, but I'll come back to that. And in short, there are two big functions of Leo. The first one is communication. That's all the things that you see bundled here in the first part. And this is also all the things that we've already implemented today. So on Leo, you can find all the news. So it's our internet, basically. You have all the news with all the documents. You have a who is who, and all the sites and locations and information on every site that we have. So every supermarket, but also every warehouses, etc. All the tasks that we need to send to stores. So that's something maybe a bit particular for the retail sector, but there are every day we send a lot of tasks to the stores, just to ask them to do certain actions in the store. Like, for example, when there's a new promotion, we need to inform them that they need to put a certain message in the store. And that's something that we also communicate via Leo. Whenever there's an urgent communication, we have a possibility to send an SMS via Leo, so to have a notification, just to really make sure that they look at Leo. And then within Leo, we always link to all the other tools as well, because that's an important part of Leo. We really want to have one central platform where they can find all the information that they need to do their job. And so we put all the links to the other applications that they use in their daily job, also in Leo. So they basically always go via Leo to go to other applications, and this really boosts also the use of Leo and the use of your internet. And then polls of survey and service, obviously, to encourage the interaction. We're still working on the second part of the modules, which are more HR modules. It's have a look at your working schedule. So everybody will have a look at their personal working schedule. This will be launched in a few weeks from now. But also the chat function, the messaging, to see who's absent and who's present within your team. And also to communicate your own absences when you're ill, for example, or do a leave request when you go on holiday. And so that's really basically the idea behind Leo. You have one tool where you can do everything to be engaged and to be informed. And it's available very close to you and your work. And that was really, really crucial, because if you want to make it make sure that people use it, then you need to bring it very close to their everyday job. And so it's available on laptop, obviously, but also on smartphone. And in our own stores, so in the bigger supermarkets, we've also have launched 2 tablets per store to make sure that all the people who do not have a smartphone or who do not want to put it on their smartphone can also access the information via an alternative channel. And in the stores, we also have order devices that they use in their everyday work, which is an Android application. So we also put Leo on there just to make sure that they can always access the information when needed. Just always to make sure that the information is close to them and always available when needed. Leo is an important part of our solution. It's a crucial part of our solution, but it's only half of the solution, because it's part of a bigger ecosystem, as I said before. And you can only if you have a very strong digital solution, you need to make sure to also have a very important in real life cascading. Because, and that was an insight that we had very early on in the process, if you're going to boost your digital, it's very strong, but it can also be perceived as something negative by your people. Because before, we all often used the cascading, so the hierarchy, to bring certain messages. Now, often we go directly to the sales associates or to the blue collars, but it also implies that there's less contact between the hierarchy and the person and the person involved. And so to balance this, we really made sure to already anticipate the launch of Leo by focusing on this cascading, by providing training, and by improving all our events. And so that's really a huge tip that I want a message I want to get across to you guys. Focus on your in real life comm before launching the digital tools, because it's so important to create already a culture of interactivity, a culture of fun, a culture of dialogue before you start the digital tool, because a tool is only a tool, it's a culture that will make the difference. And so I've prepared some examples here just to illustrate how we concretely improved our events. And so the first 3 pictures here are pictures from our strategy week. And so what we did, because again, we want to really link the everyday work to the bigger picture and the bigger strategy of Delhaize. So we, 4 times a year, we inform all our associates on our strategy. And so we had a strategy week that takes place in the beginning of the year. And in strategy week, we invite all our our store management and our supporting services people, and really onboard them on our strategy. So they are there for I think 3 hours. And in these 3 hours, we have a panel conversation where the executive committee explains and discusses our strategy, but in an interactive way. So it's really a panel conversation with a moderator who asks questions and who interferes when something is not clear. And then we have 3 workshops. So the group of approximately 100 people is cut in 3 smaller groups. And so every smaller group goes to the 3 workshops. And in each workshop, we really try to have them experience our strategy. So we go into the depth of one subtopic, and we really bring this in a very interactive and fun way, also to really activate them, to make them not just a passenger of a strategy, but really an active member of the strategy and contributing to the strategy. And then the last part is a Q&A session in which you can ask all their questions. And we really noticed that thanks to the build-up of these strategy sessions, there are more and more questions every time. In the beginning, the first session, we had very few questions. And now in the latest session that we had in February, we didn't have time to answer all the questions because there were just too many questions. So you see that it pays off to continue to have these events, and that you're really building something. And then here on below, it was this is our CEO here on the right, doing some cheerleading, because and this was an event for our leadership, because we really wanted to lead by example, and to show that it's okay to have fun, it's okay to be authentic, and to go a bit further than be a bit disruptive and do new things, because that's what we expect from you as a leadership as well. So the focus on interaction, on fun, is very important. And on the other hand, the focus on recognition was something that we also started to improve already 2 years ago. So on the right side, you see a picture of Patrick Koremans, who is a store manager at Delhaize, and he won the Store Manager of the Year award. And that's something that we really try to put forward, that we really make we do a really big communication campaign around this, just to make sure that also the recognition part and the personal part is very, very alive. And so I prepared, I have 2 videos in a slide just to explain everything a bit more in detail, because I think that a picture says more than a lot of words. So let's take a look at a video of our strategy week.
De Strategy Week is ontzettend belangrijk, omdat dat onze gelegenheid geeft om met de medewerkers de initiatieven te delen waar we werken in het kader van onze strategie, en om allemaal in dezelfde richting te denken. L'objectif premier qu'on a, c'est que tout le monde s'approprie la stratégie, donc pour ça il faut d'abord la connaître. Il est important que tout le personnel chez Delhaize comprenne la stratégie, comprenne là où on veut aller. Ça va faciliter énormément de choses de collaboration dans les départements, de compréhension de pourquoi on fait certains choix. Donc il est important que tout le monde soit vraiment mis à bord de cette stratégie et la comprenne et puisse se l'approprier. Een workshop was een leuke manier om speelse manier om kennis te maken met het bedrijf en ook wat de impact is en de omvang van Delhaize binnen België. Surtout que voilà, c'est début d'année, donc on doit tout doucement réfléchir à nos plans d'action pour l'année 2019. Donc c'est important pour nous, effectivement, qui sont surtout sur le terrain, de connaître un peu c'est quoi la vision de Delhaize pour l'année 2019 concrètement, et savoir ce qu'on attend concrètement de nous pour qu'on puisse effectivement orienter notre plan d'action dans ce sens-là. We hebben in de laatste workshop niet nagedacht over de samenwerking. En dan sta je wel eventjes stil bij waar we staan, wat onze uitdagingen zijn en wat we eigenlijk al moeten doen, dat we ook niet vergeten. Ik heb de workshop Operations gevolgd en ja, er zijn altijd duizelingwekkende cijfers die voor mij dan naar boven komen. We staan daar iets verder af en het is wel leuk om te weten waar de collega's over gans het land mee bezig zijn. Pour moi, tout c'était de nouvelles informations parce que je suis toute nouvelle chez Delhaize. Ça fait que 6 mois, alors tout pour moi c'était de nouvelles informations et j'ai beaucoup enrichi mes connaissances. Strategie is het duidelijk dat alle gebeurtenissen van de afgelopen dagen, de gele hesjes, rode hesjes, klimaat, Delhaize pakt dat op en vertaalt dat op zijn manier. On a pu apprendre pas mal de choses sur voilà, le marché, sur la grande distribution, sur Delhaize, mais aussi sur la concurrence. Donc c'est toujours bon d'avoir une petite piqûre de rappel et de redécouvrir toutes les réalités de l'actualité qu'on n'a pas toujours conscience, et donc de pouvoir échanger à ce niveau-là avec les différents départements, c'était super intéressant. Het wel interessant om te zien dat iedereen begaan is met het toekomst van het bedrijf en iedereen zijn eigen visie heeft. Dus nu is het een kwestie van iedereen dezelfde richting te krijgen. Dat hebben wij heel mooi toekomst voor ons.
So this was a little recap of our strategy week of last year. And so, yeah, I think the most important message here is start tweaking your events already today. Because we notice the impact when you launch a more digital tool afterwards. You already have this culture of interaction, a culture of fun, a culture of feedback, where you can build on afterwards. And so I also have a second movie here that I want to show you about recognition. Because again, if you go for a more digital tool, it can also be perceived as something something you take away from a personal interaction that you take away from people. So the recognition part is very important, and so that's why we throughout the year we have several recognition campaigns, and so I want to bring one example with you.
We zijn hier vandaag in de supermarkt van Overijse, waar we zo dadelijk Nienke de Krem kan feliciteren met haar verkiezing tot store manager ODR. En ik ga dat niet alleen doen, ik heb Hans Michiels meegebracht, die hier naast mij staat. Ja, beste collega's, we zijn inderdaad in Overijse. Nienke is vandaag niet de store manager van Overijse. Dus vandaag is ze ook, maar we hebben met een excuus en een smoes naar hier gelopen, om haar toch in de winkel als die mooie resultaat heeft gehaald te kunnen feliciteren. Volgen jullie ons?
Super verrast, maar ik had dat echt niet verwacht. Ik was al heel blij dat ik bij de genomineerden was. Ik vond er al een enorme verdiensten. En als een zo'n goede directeur daar ook tussen, dus ik had het echt niet verwacht. Ja, ik ben echt heel blij. Ik vind dat Nienke een terechte winnaar is, omdat ze heel spontaan is, is heel correct, een heel goed voorbeeld. Ik heb een korte samenwerking mee gehad, maar ik heb heel veel geleerd. Dus ik sta ook open om uitleg te geven en bij te sturen waar nodig. Ik heb het geluk gekregen dat ik 2 jaar lang met Nienke mocht samenwerken. En het is echt een vriendelijke, geëngageerd persoon en altijd motiverend persoon. En dat maakt het ook plezant om mee te werken.
Ik heb natuurlijk geluk, ik krijg de store manager dit jaar in mijn team. Maar vanaf de eerste paar maanden dat we nu gestart zijn, voldoet aan alle wat we verwacht hadden van haar. Dus ze is niet goed gestart in Kessel.
Waar dat Nienke ook super sterk in is, dat is als ze haar tanden zet in iets, dan bijt ze door tot op het einde. Nienke gaat keer op keer op datzelfde nageltje blijven slaan tot haar stenozen is. Dus ze stelt haar prioriteiten en ze gaat ervoor zorgen dat dat ook afgewerkt wordt. En dat is fantastisch om te zien, week in week uit.
Ze heeft hier een ongelooflijke teamspirit gebracht, prachtige resultaten neergezet samen met haar team. Ze heeft hier een communicatiecultuur geïnstalleerd tussen de medewerkers, maar ook en vooral naar de klanten toe. Facebookpagina is daar een zeer mooi voorbeeld van, maar ook de manier waarop dat ze de zaken gebracht heeft. Wat ik Nienke toewens en wat voor mij ook de inspiratie is die zij aan heel de reis meegeeft, is dingen doen waar ze hier in Overijs heel knap werk gedaan heeft, namelijk een team bouwen. Zorgen dat je mensen aan boord hebt, dat je die mensen ontwikkelt, individueel, maar ook collectief. Dat je daar niet alleen goede en betere medewerkers van maakt en goede en betere leiders, maar daar ook een sterk team van maakt dat samenhangt en vecht voor de resultaten.
We hebben hier heel hard gewerkt in supermarkt Overijs met heel het team, een heel jong team gehad. Dus ik denk dat dat een heel mooie verdienste is voor zowel mij, maar ook voor heel het team. Dus het geeft mij een heel warm gevoel en ik hoop dat het doen ook een warm gevoel geeft dat we samen met iets hebben toegewerkt.
So this was a very concrete example on how we try to recognize our people in a very authentic and even it's digital in a very fun and positive way. So that was all I wanted to tell you about the more in real life experience. Another important learning that I want to share with you is the impact of being more visual, because I think the following will sound familiar for a lot of you, because we had often the reaction, I don't know, I didn't know anything about this, I was not informed. And then we had to say, no, we've communicated on this via internet, via mail, etc. And the reaction was always, sorry, I don't have the time to read this. And this was very typical for our associates in the stores. Again, there are people, most of the people do not have an email address, so we had to communicate via the store manager, and often they put things on Advalvas. And then these people in the stores or in logistics were people who didn't go to school very long or don't have a high degree, and they don't like reading. They want to have a very visual information because they don't want to spend too much time on communicating or listening to communications. And so when we looked at how we were communicating at the time, we couldn't blame them because we still had a lot of text and we still had a lot of long communications, and they just didn't take the time to read this and to understand what we were trying to say. So this was our old internet, where we had a lot of text and a lot of articles. And even before we made the transition to Leo, we already looked at, okay, how can we make our current internet a lot more visual and a lot more simple to also use the same communication to the people in our stores and the people in our warehouses. And so already on this internet, we started to change our articles. So we never use Word anymore. We always start in PowerPoint, where we have support of our graphical agency, and we also do some things ourselves. So we create the articles in PowerPoint just to make it more visual and to not always start by writing a text. We start by looking for visuals and we build on that. And so because we already communicated like this before the launch of Leo, as an internal communication team, the transition was also a lot easier because we were already used to a certain way of working. Because when we had Leo, we continued with these type of articles, so very visual, very few text, but more images, and so a lot of video as well. So this is an example of a video that we put on the top of the article, and then below we always put a recap of the most important messages. So it's, again, for the people who do not have time to watch a video, they also have the information at their disposal. Another concrete example that I want to share with you is the evolution of our weekly newsletter. So every week we send a mail to highlight all the most important news published on our intranet at the time, or Leo today. And so this is how our old newsletter used to look like. So I think this is a very typical newsletter with a lot of text and not very attractive for associates. And this is how we changed it already before we made a transition to Leo. So we worked with a lot more visuals, always to attract people to our articles. And so when we made a transition to Leo, it was just a small step for us, and it was also already something that our audience was used to. So this was what I want to say about the preparation of Leo and how we try to combine the digital and the in real life communication, and for both of these tools, do it in a very visual and simple way. I also prepared a little example on a concrete example on how we try to bring all this together in our day-to-day communication. Because something we learned is that if you want to communicate on your strategy, you have to break it down in very small pieces. And you have to be very consistent. Communicating once about your strategy, about what you want to achieve, about your vision is not enough. People do not grasp what you're trying to say. You need to really bring it in real life, but also repeat, and break it down in very small, concrete examples. So, for example, Lion's Footprint, that's a very important part of our strategy. It's about our sustainability approach. And so it's about having less plastic, less carbon, and less waste. And it really speaks to people, but it's very vague at the same time. And so we translate this in very concrete examples, and almost every week we have at least one article related to our Lion's Footprint. And so I have prepared the story of our bananas, just to show you how we try to integrate this in everything we do and in the entire ecosystem of our media mix. So we launched carbon-free bananas at delhaize, which is a first in Belgian retail. And it might seem easy, but it's actually very difficult to have a carbon-free banana, because you need to reduce and compensate all the carbon that you produce or that you use to have the bananas in your store. So it was quite an achievement that we were very proud of. And so we started by presenting our sustainability strategy during the strategy week. To have the high-level explanation brought in a very personal way. But then we included also in one of the following workshops during the next strategy update to also have them taste the banana, to show that there's no difference in taste. But we also visualized the carbon that was saved thanks to the carbon-free banana. And this we did for all our target groups. So we did it for the people in support, but also in stores and in the warehouses. And then we supported this obviously via our online tools, so via Leo. We had an article on Leo when the bananas were launched, and we repeated it in our recap mail. But then we also integrate a call for action. So we wanted to make it fun at the same time and have this interaction. And so we did a call for action, and we asked them to send pictures, selfie pictures or pictures with their team holding the banana. And we had quite a good response on this, also thanks to the workshops that we've done, and where we had also repeated this call for action. And so this made really a really fun topic, but also a very visible topic. And then last but not least, we distributed these bananas in our cafeteria at our headquarters, but we also had it set at disposal of our stores and logistics associates as free foods in their resting area. So this is just a very small but concrete example on how we try to really use the entire ecosystem to bring our strategy to life. So there's still there's a lot that we already done for Leo, but we're not there yet. I think there's still a lot to do and a lot to improve. Repeat is the main conclusion. We see that we every day we need to repeat internally that Leo is the way to go, and we repeat why we are doing this, and it's not a good idea to send a mail to the store or to call the store manager, but to really pass via Leo. We're all still in full rollout mode, so we have launched it to our sales associates a few weeks ago, and to our blue collars, we'll be launching it in a few weeks. Today we're not there yet in terms of working data-based, and because we really want to go and look at our articles and see, okay, how many times has this video has been watched, how many times has this article has been read, and why what's working well, what's not working good enough. And then also be more targeted. I think a big advantage of the Leo tool is the fact that you can send messages to specific target groups, which is for normal internet or normal mail is not possible. It wasn't possible for us. And so here we have the possibility to really go target on an individual level and make sure that the information they receive is relevant for them. And we do this already, but we're not going far enough. So I think this is an important next step for us. So we're proud of where we already are today, but we're not there yet. I think there's still lots to do and a lot to improve. So that's still very, very challenging. And talking about challenging, I think Maarten already mentioned the big challenge of today, of the latest weeks and the weeks to come, is Corona. So I think if you want a big stress test for your communication ecosystem, I think this is it. And so I want to share with you a very high level how the last few weeks have been. I'll go a bit further than only the internal communication, but also for a company, what were the biggest challenges for us as a company, and how did we as internal communication try to cope with this? Because the Corona madness, I think we can call it, started a few weeks ago. And so from a governance point of view, we started with a crisis cell. So this crisis cell consists of, I think, about 20 people who represent all the different departments of Delhaize. And we have the full mandate of the executive committee to take decisions. So it's actually a parallel crisis team that's been put in place, and we have full responsibility of taking decisions without sometimes even ExCo intervenience. And so every morning we have a crisis call with the team where everybody gives a status of their track. And for me as internal communication, this is very important because that's where I get the information and where I get a very clear view on everything that's happening and all the challenges of the day, and where I get the information to go and communicate afterwards to the different target groups. And so I prepared a bit of an overview of the big challenges per week. So the first week, really overnight, the situation totally changed. So we had from just a food retailer who's trying to get people in your store and attract clients to come to you and not to another competition, the situation reversed, and we were in a situation where all our racks were empty in 2 days' time. And so the big challenge of at that time was just getting our products in store, but also mostly keeping our people safe, because it's very challenging to explain to people why everybody's doing homework and why all the other companies are closing, are quitting their operations, but you need to continue. And they understood, because we really emphasized the social responsibility that we have, and we really tried to put forward the fact how they can really contribute to the country and to the situation of today. But at the same time, on an individual level, people are scared. They're scared to get infected. They're scared to get contaminated, and so it's a difficult situation to deal with. And in the first week, there was so much going on. We really had to change our entire way of working. So there was, just from a communication point of view, a massive information that we need to get to the stores. And so here we could rely on the speed of Leo, the digital aspect. But we also noticed how people very easily fall back to old habits. So we had a lot of people from supporting services who started to call the store manager, who started to send emails just to get their information to the stores. And that's a very natural reaction, I think. People want to make sure that the information got to the stores, and they were like, okay, it's in the stores, I'm covered, the information is there. But on the store level, it was not a solution, because they were just overwhelmed by the mass of information, and they didn't have an overview on what was critical and what was not business critical at the time. And so that's where we could step in, and we really work together with the business to create this cascading and this in real life communication. Thanks to so we evolved the hierarchy to help to filter which the messages, what is crucial and what is not crucial here, and to really just point out all the priorities of the time. So the first week was just mass information, trying to cope, and every day working very long days, both in stores, in logistic, and in head office, just to try to manage. But I think that as a company, we did well. We within a few days, we had a lot of safety measures installed in stores to protect our people, and that's also how we got them to calm down, because we continue to communicate, we continue to take very concrete actions, and so people saw that we were doing something, and that that was taken seriously. So that was a bit the first week in a nutshell. A lot of things to do, a lot of information, but we got there thanks to a good governance and thanks to a good cascading system. I think the second week was we had a way of working in terms of getting the product in store. We knew the biggest challenges, so there we had a new system set in place, so that was more or less covered. The second week was really about protecting our associates. And first of all, taking a step back and saying, okay, last week, what were all the things that we were put in place, just to create some overview and to step back from the mass information and trying to get a grip on the information, but also about, and that was a very new thing for us, it was all about educating the customer. Normally we speak very politely and we're very cautious about how we communicate to the customer, because we want to make them come to our stores, and we're proud to have them in our stores and to talk about our stores. And in the last week, we really had to be strict sometimes to our customers, saying, no, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you need to respect this rule, you need to respect this rule, just to protect our associates. Because we had quite challenging situations in our stores. We had our staff being spit on, we had a lot of aggression, and so these were cases that we said, okay, this is something we cannot accept, we don't want to accept, and we have our societal role, and we really want to keep on providing food to our Belgian population. But at the same time, we also want to protect our associates, and so in order to do so, we need to educate our customer. So that was a next level, I would say, in terms of communication. It was also communication that we were in charge of. It's a bit atypical because it's communication towards the clients, but because it was so close to our operations and to the way of working in the stores, it's something that we took on as well in the internal communication team. And then a third part that we added in the second week was really a positive campaign towards our associates. Because the first week had been very hectic. The second week, we really want to acknowledge everything that was being done in the stores and how the people in the stores and logistics were being very responsible and were going the extra mile in order to be able to serve our clients. So we started with a positivity campaign via videos, but also via our social media, press interviews. We really used the press to bring forward all the things that were done in our stores, and we also put this internally on Leo to boost the proudness. We also put a lot of work in bundled information, so creating overviews, and to make sure that there was a very clear view on all the measures put in place. And for this, as an internal communication responsible, for me it was about also using your elbows internally. So just taking your position and making sure that nobody goes directly to the store, but also everything goes via internal communication. And so I really had to be very strict, and it was a week where I was the bad guy, and that was okay, because at the end of the week we had much more structure in our communication, and it was much more clear for our store and our warehouse associates what had been done and what was expected of them. And last but not least, it was also a week in which we really talked as a company about, okay, how can we support the target groups in the Belgian population that are today in a very weak position. For example, all the hospitals, but also all the elderly people. How can we make sure that we also answer to their demands and we think about them? That's why we started to give priority to elderly people between 8 and 9, and we also give priority to people in healthcare, and we even started a collaboration with Colruyt to deliver at hospitals. And this week is the third week. We really saw a peak in the aggression of clients, and we see that the people are starting to get frustrated by the situation. People are tired. They have to combine often kids at home with homeworking, and so they go to the supermarket, and also in the supermarket they have to wait in line to go to the supermarket, and so they are often very aggressive and very negative towards our people. We also have the other aspect. We also have a lot of clients who are very positive and very grateful for everything that we are doing, but still we see that there is a lot of aggression. So we had to add a second guard, for example, at our stores, just to protect our associates. And so also internally we felt that the people are still very afraid and are getting tired, which made our unions nervous, because also the discussions about a possible compensation was being blocked at the government level. And we were really torn between, on the one side, the government rules and then the demands internally, for example, for the mouth masks. So we had a few strikes even in our stores, but thanks to the communication, we were able to reopen the stores. And we were able to just calm down and again explain the why of certain actions, or the reason why we didn't take certain actions. To give you a very concrete example, mouth masks was something that people in our stores in our warehouse were asking. We want mouth masks, we have more protection, but the government on the other hand was saying, no, you cannot distribute mouth masks to your people because the mouth masks are for the people in healthcare. And so we're really torn between, on the one side, the government, and on the other side, the people internally. And so we had to try to explain why we couldn't distribute the mouth masks. But for people who are in the front line, they just don't want to hear all the excuses. They just want to have the mouth masks, especially when they are tired and frustrated. So that's where we really had to add an extra level in communication and doing a specific cascading system and cascading of information on this topic, just to take away all the frustration and to avoid spreading of the strikes. So the personal here was more important than ever in our internal, our own stores, but also in our franchising stores, where we have our specific guidance for these stores, and we really ask them to call up the franchisors every day just to get in touch with them and to feel how everything is going. So also in this crisis situation, again, it's digital is very strong because it's very quick and because it's very clear on where you can find the information. but the combination with the personal and the in real life communication is crucial. If one of the two is lacking, then you're lost. And then last but not least, we really went also the extra mile in boosting communication. So meaning having very positive communication, positive stories that we put on our social media, but also via Leo, again, to acknowledge all the hard work that's been done. So that's I think in a nutshell how the last 3 weeks have been for us. So very challenging, but we're managing, and I think we can be proud of how we as a company, but also our people in the stores and the warehouse are dealing with the situation. So let's. Yes.
Laura, I'm gonna have to interrupt you because we're running towards the end of the time we had planned. I know you were about to give a quick demo and a sneak peek of what Leo looks like.
Yeah.
If people are interested, I suggest they reach out either to you or to me, and we can still plan for that. But I don't want to overrun our time too much. I do thank you very deeply from the bottom of my heart for carving out the time. I think the last 3 slides on how you're managing COVID, I think that illustrates the amount of pressure on the team in terms of both governing things internally and then getting the message out to the decentralized and distributed workforce. I can only wish you guys all the best. I think you're indeed doing very well. I've received quite some questions. We'll try to group kind of the common topics. There are topics around or questions around union impact, for example, when you started rolling out. There are questions around the uptake and the onboarding and whether that required training, yes or no. So we'll group some of these and make sure that we redistribute them to all of the attendees of this session. On that note, Laura, thanks again. All the best with what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, and sincerely keep doing what you're doing, because I think if the food supplies would go down, then we'd really be in a crisis. And I think we've lost Laura in the meanwhile. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good afternoon. Stay safe, stay healthy, and let's be in touch for one of the next sessions. Thank you very much. Have a good day.